道で見るいつもの新聞いつものテレビどこ行ってもすぐそこに心ハムスルーでどこ行ってもすぐそこに笑顔溢れてくいつだって Yeah 途方に暮れて迷っても君を待つ家の光いつだってラララララ
Ooh, welcome back to the Game Night Podcast. Welcome back to the Game Night Podcast, Seattle Chronicles. This is.
It's dark in here.
It is. Today is going to be a special episode. This is unfortunately the last episode of the Seattle Chronicles, so it's been a pleasure to hang out with you boys, and I'm sure we'll do it again soon.
I hope
Provided
so.
America doesn't end.
Sweet
But speaking of scary things, Danny's
Jesus.
singing.
Guys, I'm drinking, okay?
Today, I have some scary stories for the boys. I'm gonna read a couple these scary stories, and then the boys are gonna rate them 1 to 10 on believability and scariness. Sound like a plan?
Sure.
I think that's a great last episode.
And feel free to interject and ask questions or whatever,
Okay.
whatever you feel is funny.
For those of you that are listening on Spotify, on YouTube, we have all the lights off, so if you guys want to go ahead and join us, try and set yourself up.
It's really set the mood,
Yeah.
Set yourself the mood. If you guys are watching on YouTube, join with us. Also, by the way, we joined the Seattle Merch Club. I got mine on.
I have mine on too.
Yeah. But we're good. We're out here.
We're out here. All
We're
right.
out with some Seattle merch.
So the first story I have, cue scary music here. I hired a locksmith to let me back inside my house. Unfortunately, I hadn't thought to read his online reviews. A few days ago, I accidentally locked myself out of my house after having gone out for groceries. When I returned to my home and found the doors locked, I quickly Googled and contacted a local locksmith. I had groceries which required freezing and a dog inside, 2 things which prevented me from shopping around for a reputable locksmith. I merely selected and dialed the first decent-looking one I came across. I was given a reasonable quote over the phone and also a time at which to expect the locksmith. However, nearly 2 hours passed before he showed up. His truck was unmarked and presumably his personal vehicle, and his clothing was similarly plain. There was nothing to associate him with any service or company. He was nice enough, though, and even apologized for his lateness, although an explanation wasn't offered. He fiddled with the door for a moment, retrieved some tools, and went to work. A few minutes later, and a change of tools, he opened the door. It was fairly hot outside, so I went in and grabbed a water bottle for him. He graciously thanked me, and then began the payment process. I'd been somewhat annoyed at his lateness, but the quickness of the actual unlocking of the door and his politeness had made my bad temper simmer down. But then he told me the job total, and I again became annoyed. It was well beyond the amounted quote over the phone, but having little time to waste, I accepted and confirmed the payment, and then went inside. The total had been $200. I had plans that day, so I put the incident in the back of my mind and went about my business. The following day, while relaxing and browsing stuff on the internet, I remembered the cost of the locksmith job, which had all but drained my wallet. I googled locksmith services in my area and even contacted a few of them, and came to the conclusion that I had been ripped off considerably. The job had been during regular operational hours. The locksmith had been late. The method he'd used was amateur, likely to cause damage to the door, a risk I was not forewarned about, and he wore nothing which identified his company. In hindsight, everything about the experience was unprofessional. Luckily, or so I thought at the time, the third-party payment service they used to give the option the third-party payment service they used gave the option to dispute the charge in the link provided by the text receipt. I selected it, and after briefly explaining my situation, I was contacted by a customer service representative. But despite the option to dispute the charge, she couldn't actually facilitate a refund of my money, only tell me information I already knew, that being the phone number of the locksmith service I'd used. Annoyed, but not deterred, I called the locksmith company and explained the situation, whilst politely but firmly demanding at least a partial refund. But not only did they deny me a refund, they said the rate was fair because I, quote, "we got you inside, didn't we?" I explained to them that they had ripped me off, provided them with quotes from other companies for the same job they had performed, but they remained indignant. In a moment of frustration, I said that I wasn't afraid to take them to small claims court, and the phone operator responded, "You do what you gotta do, we'll do what we gotta do," and then hung up on me. I was too angered at the time to be unsettled, so I didn't really consider the parting statement to be a threat until later that night, when my frustration had dissipated with the arrival of nighttime, when I usually relax, watch TV, and reflect on the day. The man's words became reinterpreted as a threat when I realized that I was dealing with someone who was probably unlicensed and unregistered. Beyond some Google ad posting, someone who, by trade, could enter a home soundlessly and with ease. I wouldn't say that I'm a coward or scared easily, but I do know when to be sensibly cautious. It was around 8 p.m. when this revelation came to me. I didn't have any weapons in my house, at least things I intended for such a purpose, so I went to a neighbor's house, a trip I hadn't ever taken since moving into the neighborhood some 6 years before. Since we are essentially strangers, I tried my best to represent my situation in a way that would warrant his interest and support. I explained what happened, admittedly dramatizing the phone call to suggest that the locksmith would be prowling in the area, rather than targeting my house specifically. I also emphasized the truth that I had essentially been scammed by an unprofessional, something I think everyone can sympathize with. This neighbor is an old man, but not old enough to be totally unwelcome of strangers and their problems. He agreed that I should probably have some sort of greater protection in my home than some cooking and gardening tools, even if the locksmith is just making empty threats. I was elated and thought I'd soon be loaned a proper weapon of some sort, but after re-entering his house for several moments, he returned with not a weapon, but a candle. He handed this to me and said, "Before you sleep tonight, light this candle someplace near an exit of your home. Anyone, it does not matter. Make sure that you do not inhale the scent emitted, and rest assured that any trespassers on your property will be swiftly dealt with. You needn't worry about cleanup or anything like that. All will be taken care of." He shut his door without further explanation, leaving me standing on his front porch holding a candle the size of a whiskey glass. I returned home and set the candle on my kitchen table. It was the first time I'd had any face-to-face interaction with the man, and despite his bizarre assistance, his behavior didn't appear to be that of someone who succumbed to senility. But, of course, I was not ready to be relying upon a candle for my safety, so I packed up some tools and brought them with me upstairs, and made sure the doors were firmly shut and locked, as if it mattered, given the circumstances of my situation. I'd even briefly considered placing obstructions before the doors, but found this to be a bit too silly to perform. I'm not a superstitious person, and I wouldn't have even said that the candle had any relation to superstition or supernatural, but I did go back downstairs and light it. Who knows, I thought. Maybe it'll deter some intruders with some awful smell. Maybe that's why he told me not to inhale the scent. I followed the man's instructions and quickly left before the flame reached the topmost layer of wax. The following morning I received a visit from the police. Apparently a vehicle had been found down the street, only recently abandoned. Recently, as in the last few hours. One neighbor had noticed it while going out for her mail and knew at once that it didn't belong to anyone in the neighborhood. It was also parked too close to her house for her liking. so she called the police, who came not long after to investigate. They ran the plates, identified its owner, and tried to contact them, but had no luck in doing so. Another set of officers visited the address of the person to which the vehicle had been registered, but no one was home. The police went around my neighborhood asking if anybody knew the vehicle's owner. As you might have guessed, this vehicle belonged to the locksmith who unlocked my door. While they explained the situation to me, I couldn't help but notice a lingering smell issuing from my kitchen. I hadn't yet made coffee, so the smell was unrivaled amongst the atmosphere of my home. I realized that it had come from the candle. Nothing else in my house smelled like that, and was surprised to find it was fairly enjoyable, sweet, and pleasant. It took the officer shouting my name to pull me out of the mid-Riviere induced by the faint smell of the candle. Not wanting to incriminate myself in the disappearance, assuming he just wandered off somewhere, I told the police that I had no idea who the vehicle could have belonged to. They gave me weird looks, but accepted my proclaimed ignorance and moved on to the next house. Once my front door was shut, I nearly sprinted into my kitchen. On the table was the candle's glass holder, however the wax had almost fully reduced by the flame. Barely a stain was left. The candle was no longer lit, the wick bent and curled by the melted wax had solidified around it. Only an echo of the candle's scent persisted, and yet it was incredibly powerful. Standing there in the kitchen, I actually lost time, was totally bewildered by the smell. Over an hour later, after being shaken from my candle-induced intoxication by my phone alarm, I went upstairs and began cleaning myself up. As I showered, I couldn't help but suddenly feel powerfully terrified. Even though the candle's olfactory enchantment had almost been sublime, something about losing myself so easily and totally unsettled me to my core. It was a feeling more intense than any drug, drink, or physical sensation I've ever experienced. Once finished, I dressed and headed over to my neighbor's house, the one who had provided me with the candle. He answered promptly, undisturbed by my early visit. I greeted him and asked about the candle, telling him about my experience with it after it had burned itself out. He smiled, adjusting his sleeping gown, and said, almost in a whisper, "It burns deliciously, intoxicatingly, and can stop a man in his tracks with just one note of its scent. It can ensnare the hardiest of man and rapture the most chaste. At its most potent, it is irresistible. All other stimuli become as ghosts, immaterial, invisible, unheeded. One could do anything to a man enscolded by the candle." And as he had done last time, he closed the door on me before I could even think of a response. But before it closed, I saw through the dwindling opening a wall full of candles and paraphernalia of perfumery, and seated within a lounge chair, unbound but clearly subdued by something, was a man who I recognized as the locksmith, an expression of deep relaxation upon his face. First story.
It wasn't very scary, but it was kind of believable. It just seems like a couple of events that happened to someone and then they just threw a murderer in.
What's so believability? What would you rate it?
I mean, like, it just feels like someone just went through, like, a normal week of their life and was like, oh, but I could, like, find a way to work all this together into a story. I
don't think any of these stories probably actually happened, but what is the likelihood that it could happen?
This one's, like, none, because it requires, like, magic candles that can enchant you with their scent.
I don't think it's necessarily magic. I think, have you ever heard of...
Just this great smell.
Well, have you ever heard of devil's breath? Devil's breath is a drug in South America that people use on tourists, and basically the idea is you powder it and then you blow it in someone's face, and they act perfectly normal, but if you tell them to do something, they will do it.
That's fucked up.
They completely lose all freedom of will.
That's fucked up.
And so there's plants and stuff that can completely fuck with someone, and so, like, I think that's kind of the idea behind it. I don't think it's supernatural so much as, like, scientific.
Well, the story doesn't fucking explain that.
It actually, I believe...
I don't understand how this locksmith ended up at the guy's house.
Because...
She burnt the candle
She burnt the candle, so I assume... So the locksmith unlocked the door to get in, and so I assumed that guy was watching her house since they were neighbors. Saw the guy open the house, knew that the candle was gonna, like, make him ensnared, and then just went over and was like, alright, come with me. And just pulled him over.
Makes sense. I'd say, like, scary factor, not very scary at all.
No.
No, it was more of a hero.
Yeah, it's more an active.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like, even if you gotta think, like, oh, hey, random locksmith doesn't have a company's, like, name on his shirt. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I've called a locksmith before, and he's, like, showed up in a fucking tank top.
That's
So,
true.
like, not very scary, but also, like, fairly believable story.
Yeah.
You know, as far as, you know, hey, you know, this happened. But, you know, once it gets to the end and it's like, oh, well, like, he ended up here because of, you know, this kind of thing, like this candle, you know, did this. That's where it gets a little unbelievable. But, I mean, the good, like, the first, like, 75% of the story, completely believable. It sounds like almost 1 out of every 10 routine locksmith visits.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So, like, I don't know.
How about you, Danny?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's something that it's more on the believable side than most other stories that I've heard. Scary wise, I don't think it's necessarily that scary. It's more of a what the fuck kind of thing. 'Cause I mean, the story seemed fine, but it wasn't until like she said she saw the dude that it was just like, okay, what the fuck.
I think that it was low-key lame as fuck.
But
Fair enough.
All that
sounds
waiting
like
for
a-
what
a-
reveal?
sounds like a cliffhanger for a Netflix series. The first episode.
That's true. All right. The next one I have is, I'm on a train. I keep seeing the same man at every stop. It happened on a Sunday night. I was taking the 1147 Amtrak from Washington, D.C. to NYC after visiting my boyfriend. As we pulled up to the Aberdeen stop, I saw him, a man standing on the platform. He stood with his back to the train under the shadow of the station's awning, tall, well-built. Despite the muggy July heat, he wore a long trench coat and a hat, standing perfectly still. He stuck out like a sore thumb against the passengers hurrying off the train. Weird. I'd taken this train from errands many times before and rarely saw anyone get on this late, especially at a tiny stop like Aberdeen. As the doors whooshed open, I waited for him to board, but he didn't. He didn't even turn around. What's he doing out there, if not boarding? Waiting for another train, maybe? With a clank, the train started back up again. I shrugged and turned up the volume on my Journey playlist. Lights flashed across the windows as we picked up speed. I think that's Journey as in like travel playlist, not like
No,
the
it's.
band.
I
Journey.
think it's the band.
Lights flashed across the windows as we picked up speed. In the distance, the twinkling lights of a town, a highway, with pairs of headlights rolling past. A colossal antenna flashing red at the top. The grays and blacks of the ground smudged into a blur melted into the purple sky. My eyes fluttered closed. Now arriving in Wilmington, Delaware. The conductor's voice from the overhead speakers jolted me awake. I stretched, popped my earbuds out, and looked around. The train car was empty now. The 2 girls who'd been sitting near the back were gone. Yawning, I turned to the window. My blood ran cold. There he was. The man in the trench coat, again, standing on the platform, several feet away from the train. I gripped the armrest, my heart pounding. No, there's no way. The Amtrak goes faster than a car. How could he get here so fast? And why? Why would he be standing at the next stop when he didn't get on board? Whoosh. The doors whooshed open. I stared at him, face pressed against the window, watching for movement, but he didn't move. He just stood there in the shadows, back to the train. But he was closer than last time. I could see the nape of his neck and the shadow of dark hair that poked from under his hat. his black dress shoes shining in the light. Clack. I jumped, but it was only the doors clanking shut. The train rumbled underneath me, and then we were pulling away, the man and the station replaced with open fields of grass. I pulled out my phone. I just saw the same guy at 2 different train stops, Aberdeen and Williamton, I wrote, my fingers flying across the keys. It's really weird. The 3 dots appeared. Then Aaron replied, What? The same guy at both? Like he drove there as the train did? Yeah, my thumbs hesitated over the keys, wondering if I should tell her how strange he was, too. The trench coat, the hat, always facing away. Probably some weirdo, I typed instead and hit send. You should have Becca meet you when you get into NYC, Aaron texted back, and call me when you're safe back home, okay? That time, I didn't go to sleep. I stayed awake until we hit Philadelphia. As we pulled into the station, and I saw the myriad of street lamps twinkling in the darkness, I felt waves of relief. What is it about seeing civilization, crowds, cities that assuages our fear? It's like we're programmed to believe that nothing bad can ever happen in sight of other people, or that the mere presence of city lights, even if there's no one around, can drive the evil away. Nonetheless, when we pulled into 30th Street station, there was no strange figure in a trench coat. I watched a few people get off the train car ahead of mine, a tall woman in a pink coat, a hipster guy wearing a knitted cap, a nerdy-looking businesswoman. Then the train pulled forward and we plunged into the darkness. Feeling better about the whole thing, I shot off another text to Aaron. Just past Philadelphia, he wasn't there. Oh, good. I was starting to get worried. Call me when you're safe in your apartment, okay? Will do. I love you. I took the jacket off my lap, rolled it into a makeshift pillow, and leaned against the window. The darkness whipped past, and I soon was dozing off again. Now arriving in Cornwall Heights, Pennsylvania. I blearily opened my eyes. The station was small, a little shack attached to the platform. As only lit... What?
Wait, how long is this train?
It's from Delaware to New York, so pretty fucking long.
Okay. Because I was a little concerned because I was like, it's standard, hey, we're taking a train.
Yeah.
At first when, you said Aberdeen or whatever, I was like, pretty sure, I thought that was in New York, but I may have been mistaken.
Yeah, I think it's in Delaware.
Yeah, so I was confused because you were like, oh, Delaware, Pennsylvania. And I was like, how far is this train?
This is a long train.
All right.
As the only lit structure, it seemed to float in the darkness, disconnected from the rest of the world. And standing there, alone on the platform, was the man in the trench coat. I jerked back. No, I whispered. It can't be. He faced the train now, but his head was cut off by the height of the window. I could only see his black shoes, the buttons rising up his coat. Who the hell are you? Why are you following this train? I sat there, frozen with fear, my mind racing. The doors hissed open. This time he moved. My heart plummeted as he slowly turned towards the front of the train, my face still hidden. Then he took a step, a slow, deliberate step towards the back of the car. Then another, and another. Muggy heat crept in the doors. Sweat ran down my neck. Move, I thought desperately to the train. Please move. Clank. The door shut. The train groaned into motion. Relief flooded me. It's okay. I'm okay, I repeated in my head. Trying to steady my pounding heart, the train swayed as it picked up speed, racing through the darkness. I'm okay. I'm... Clink. A small sound coming from behind me. I whipped around. No. He was inside. He stood in the vestibule at the back of the car, facing away from me, trench coat hanging loosely from his shoulders. I jumped out of my seat, backed along the aisle. No. I turned and ran for the next car, pounded the open button. The doors whooshed open. I ran inside, glancing behind me. He was halfway down the aisle now, back still towards me. I bolted. The doors slid open into the next train car. Help, I shouted, but this car was empty too. Just like the last. Can anyone hear me? Help! Lights flickered, then went out. Static crackled over the speakers. Help! Whoosh! The vestibule doors opened. He faced me now. His face was hidden in the shadows of his hat, but I could make out a long nose, a twisted mouth, grotesque proportions that didn't seem quite human. He took slow, heavy steps toward me. Then he stopped. "What do you want?" I screamed. His head canted to the side. "Why are you following me?" Silence. Silence stretched out between us. It felt like only minutes, but it must have been longer, because the train was soon groaning to a stop. Now arriving in Trenton, New Jersey, the doors hissed open. I ran. I ran down on the platform, shaking, crying. When I got down to the parking lot, I glanced back. The lights were back on in the train, and in the window I saw his figure standing in the aisle. And then the train pulled away, and there was only silence. I didn't hear about the crash until the next day. The train derailed between Newark Penn Station and New York. A mangled mess of fire, metal, wire, twisted and fused to the rails. The train was empty, however. The only casualty was the conductor, and no man in a trench coat was ever found.
That one's more scary, but completely unbelievable.
Again, another story of like heroism.
Yeah, I say once you read about the crash, I was like, that almost sounds like a hero story too.
Yeah.
But like obviously it's a little bit more scary because of the fact like, hey, man in a trench coat just appearing everywhere you fucking look.
Yeah.
You know, a young woman, you know, obviously scared, not being by herself, something like that. But then once she gets out, next day she hears crash. Nobody but the conductor was on there, and it's like, oh.
It was like a guardian angel.
Yeah, almost like a.
When you said that
Fucked up
she was
guardian.
dozing off again, I was saying maybe she's just dreaming about this guy
Yeah.
because she didn't see him when she stayed up.
Yeah.
Until she fell back asleep that she saw this guy. So maybe it is like a guardian angel kind of thing.
And every time she
That's
described him, I just imagined the dude in the trench coat from the Goosebumps opening
I
theme.
was gonna say plot twist. It's the boyfriend.
That'd be wild. That'd be wild. So what do we got? With a believability, 1 to 10.
2.
Yeah,
higher
I'll give it-
higher than the last story.
I give it like a solid 2. I give this a solid 4.
Hey, we're recording a podcast.
Oh, cool.
What's up?
Just in time.
Hey guys.
Is Gage okay?
He's just fine. He's just stressed out.
He's just stressed out.
Yeah.
You gonna come sit with me? We're doing what is it? No sleep.
Yeah, r/no
He's reading
sleep.
scary stories, and we're saying if we believe them, how scary we think they are.
Did I scare you when I knocked?
Actually,
Little bit.
kind of.
Yeah, a little
This
bit.
is probably the scariest one so far.
And then a slight knock.
How much time do we have to record?
Halfway
we're
there.
about 30 minutes in.
Slight knock at the floorboard.
But everybody say hi. Tony walked in.
I don't even think Tony's on camera right now for either of them.
And the Raven said,
Yeah, you can come hang out with us. You don't even have to be on the podcast. You can
might as well
sit
just
at the right
read
time.
Edgar Allan Poe like poems.
Yeah,
I think
right.
those are pretty scary.
Honestly, yeah.
All right. Are you ready for the next story?
Yeah.
Yes.
I came home to find a twisted scavenger hunt waiting for me. I've been out of my house for a few days, and upon my return earlier, I found things a bit different. I could not immediately locate any physical evidence to substantiate this theory. It was more of a feeling. Do you ever get the feeling that someone is watching you? I get it all the time.
All the fucking time.
I always feel like somebody's watching me.
I'd been unpacking things for about half an hour before I found an unanticipated letter scrawled on half a sheet of paper left in one of my kitchen drawers. I glanced around the room warily several times before reading it. Hello, darling. I see you are packing your things up. I hope you're not planning on moving. I do think I overheard you talking to someone on the phone about leaving only for a few days, though. So I thought I'd fix a special surprise for your homecoming, a scavenger hunt. Here's your first clue. When it's time to get some rest, you get so comfy in your nest, but what about your special guest? At night time, where does he like best? Good luck, I know you can do it. I must confess that the contents of this letter sent a chill down my spine. I can't quite tell you what drove me to actually search for the next clue instead of turning on my heels and sprinting out the door, but I proceeded to the bedroom. Clearly my nest was my bed. Simple enough. I was a little discouraged when I did not discover the next clue upon or alongside my bed until I realized I was meant to find his preferred resting place. I checked the closet, the far corner of my room, everywhere. Finally, it clicked. Holding my breath, I extended one hand to feel underneath my bed frame and ripped the next clue from beneath it. You found me, one step closer to your prize. My favorite nights are spent down here with you, listening to your breath, steady and peaceful, feeling the bed settle above me as you shift in your sleep. It's the closest thing to heaven on earth. Once I even reached up with a pair of scissors and snipped a few strands of your hair. I kept the clippings in my mouth for days. You didn't even miss it, I promise.
What the fuck?
Here's your next clue. You're hungry and you need a snack. Head to this room. Food it does not lack. But what about when you turn your back? Where's the food for your hungry Jack? Okay, the kitchen. Following the clue, I crept towards the snack cupboard. I threw the cabinet open, anxious of what might be inside, but was surprised when there was no hint taped to the shelves. I tore through the snacks, discarding boxes of crackers and cookies on the floor until the cupboard was completely empty, and still no clue. Rereading the text in my hand, I suddenly recalled the other cabinet of snack foods I've barely opened since I started to become more conscious about what I'm putting in my body. Upon opening it, I immediately uncovered a folding clue atop a mess of Twinkie wrappers. I hope you don't mind, but a man's gotta eat. I have noticed how delicious you've begun to look since you gave up these sinful snacks. Once I've gotten a hold of my loot, I creep back out of sight. I think of you as I squeeze the sweet cream into my mouth. I can only imagine how sweet you taste. I can't wait to find out. Here's your next clue. It's bath time for my beauty queen. Slip off your clothes and get nice and clean. But where am I during this steamy scene? I see it all, yet remain unseen. I shudder audibly, that sickening feeling of being watched only growing.
I'm burning the whole house down at this point.
I snuck to the bathroom, instantly searching for where this man could remain hidden in such a private area. Fear grew into anger as I exhaled a long sigh, peering up at the large air vent in the ceiling. I dragged the step stool from my bedroom and positioned it beneath the opening before stepping onto it. I had to stretch quite a bit to reach, but he was kind enough to leave the corner to grab onto. I pulled it out and read it. Congratulations, this is your last clue. I must say, there is nothing more pleasing than watching you submerge yourself in a tub full of bubbles. It does get better for me as the bubbles subside and I can see your body, slick and wet. The next clue brings you to your prize. Come meet me, my favorite doll. I'm throwing a party and you're the belle of the ball. To find your prince, up the ladder you must crawl. Once you see me, you'll certainly fall. The only thing that resembles a ladder in my home is the collapsing staircase to my attic, so it was naturally the first place to look. Gathering both my courage and a knife, I tiptoed upstairs. I was worried, wondering if he was watching me, but I had resolved to get rid of him once and for all at that point. I outstretched one arm to grasp the cord hanging down from the ceiling and yanked it down with some effort, exposing the hidden staircase. I must have been absolutely nuts because I climbed up those shoddy steps to meet the constructor of this repulsive game. The overwhelming darkness of the room forced me to use the flashlight feature on my phone to maneuver in its area as I held the knife firmly in my right hand. Slowly, I made my way through an unfamiliar yet distinct path through the multitude of storage boxes in the dusty attic. I reached a clearing towards the back of the corner of the room and stopped to take in my surroundings, completely horrified. A large banner assembled from loose papers hung on the wall with the word surprise painted on a rusty brown material. Moving forward, I observed 5 chairs arranged in a small table. 3 of them were occupied by my old dolls, their hair cut to match my own, with highly pigmented makeup, haphazardly smeared on their graying faces. A tea set sat on the table with 1 cup placed on each of the 5 settings. A crown sat on the flat of the 4th seat, leading me to assume that setting was intended for me. I was perplexed to find the 5th chair completely empty. Pushed out from the surface of the table, I could perceive no sign of the author of the notes, and the room was entirely silent, save for the sound of my staggered breaths. I gingerly crept around the table until my foot made contact with a soft substance. Directing the light of my phone downwards, I was stunned to discover a man lying motionless on the floor. Along with the discovery, I was hit with a slightly sweet smell of decay. It wasn't an overwhelmingly pungent odor. It was cold up there. The body appeared relatively fresh. I crouched down to get a better look at him. He was a small thing with long, greasy hair. I noted that his eyes were swollen and red, and snot was crusted around his nose. He had constructed a pink tea dress with old scraps of fabric. His flesh, starting to bloat, strained across the materials. Some of the seams had already torn and burst. Rogue makeup was caked on his cheeks.
Cheese? Was it Havarti or Gouda?
Chipotle Gouda.
Oh, say less.
Surprise indeed, fucker, I thought aloud with a snicker, straining onto a standing position. Steadied the heel of my shoe on his forehead. How badly I wanted to crush that vile man's skull. I probably would have if my phone hadn't begun to ring at that exact moment. I took my supposed seat at the demented tea party and positioned the crown on my head before answering the phone. Hello, ma'am. This is Pest Away Fumigators. I just wanted to call to see if you are satisfied with your service. The man on the other line rattled off as soon as I picked up. Oh, yes, I confirmed, glaring down at the unwanted guest. I can already tell that the problem is fixed. The pests in this house, they were out of control. That's pretty good, right? That's pretty good.
It's a terrible fucking pun, but...
I hated that ending. It was pretty believable and it was pretty scary up until the end. That's too funny.
But no, that's such a good ending. She knew he was there, so she left for a few days and had the house fumigated.
Yeah, I know, but
that's pretty fucking good.
The way that it's phrased at the end is too, jokey and funny.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Didn't care for the pun on the end, but also I think that is very highly believable. Because if you've ever seen, the shit that pops up on Twitter...
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever, somebody was living in my fucking wall, and they show a video... Just a dude fucking reaching his arm out of the wall and touching some girl's face.
Yeah.
This shit's fucked up, and I guarantee that shit fucking happens.
Oh, easily. Homeless people will sneak into attics and shit while houses are up for sale, and then they just live there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It happens.
And there's no telling, exactly how demented or, how right in the head they are.
She got this house fumigated before she started the scavenger hunt?
Yeah, so she left for a few days. You know how it said that at the start?
Uh-huh.
She left to have the house fumigated because she got some sign that this dude was living in her house.
And he put on a scavenger hunt while she was gone.
Yeah, but then they fucking clouded the fuck out of the house and he died. And she came back to this scavenger hunt and also...
But yeah, that was probably
man.
the best one so far.
I like that.
The ending
definitely
was
the best one.
trying to be too funny.
I liked that one.
What do you think?
That one.
Tom, that's your first one.
I wasn't really listening.
Oh.
I was on r/Twitter.
Oh.
Tyler likes that one. Appreciate it.
Most subreddits are just screenshots of tweets anyway. I'm sure r/Twitter is just...
Screenshots of screenshots. Yeah, that was a solid one, though.
Yeah, that was pretty solid.
Yeah, no, I
It
like...
came full circle.
The whole time I was when I was sitting there thinking, I was like, this bitch is about to go in the attic. She ain't got no backup. She ain't calling nobody.
She
Oh, yeah.
knew, bro.
It's just one of those scary movies where it's there goes the white chick. She's gonna open the closet door. Bitch, she's in there.
It is what it is.
What it is.
It is what it is, homie man.
What's your guys' opinion on 21 Savage?
He's my favorite British person.
That's true.
What?
21 Savage is British.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
That's why he got deported.
Oh, shit.
Really?
I
Yeah.
saw his ass. They had a big stink about it.
The U.S. deported? Like,
Yeah, they
Yeah.
kicked him
He's
out.
here legally?
Yeah, he's not allowed back in the U.S.
Well,
right
I don't
now.
think he was here illegally. His visa just ran out.
Well, that's
Fuck,
being
who's
here.
That's being
legally.
here.
He was here legally.
For a
And
while.
then it
For a
ran
while,
out.
and then it ran out.
But it ran out like years ago.
And it
Oh.
was like, I think it was like 2 or 3 years.
I think it was
But,
like
but how does
6.
he not get it renewed as like a work visa? Like if he's obviously here working on music.
You can only get work visas. I think you can only stay for like 6 months, and then you have to go back for like 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that visas to live here though?
No, I think visas are 3 months, but work visas are 6 months. But I'm not 100% sure.
Extended work.
He was probably happy you guys.
Yeah, it was like extended work visas, but also, I don't know. I don't know how that would work with a musician.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It's one of them.
21. Tuesday.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Anyway, this episode has been r/no sleep ASMR and 21 Savage discussion so far.
So we got one more story. I think we got time for one more. This one is called, "For the past 19 years on the same date, no matter my address or assumed identity, I've received a deeply unsettling envelope."
It's like those weird seeds that are popping up in Arizona. You heard about that?
No.
It's like all the car
So-
warranty offers I get.
Apparently in Arizona right now, people are receiving like these weird ass seeds in their mail.
Oh, that's not good.
Like an envelope. It's like an envelope with like Japanese and like Chinese writing on it, and like they open it up and like just a bag of like seeds.
Weird. Very weird.
Snorted.
That's probably a good idea.
So I'll let you guys know if I get seeds.
Can I have a drink of that Coke?
Yeah.
You.
You can have the Coke and the Crown.
I don't want the crown.
The Crown's for Jordan.
I just want to wet my lips.
Doing all that ASMR dries a boy up.
All right, mysterious envelopes.
Wait, dude.
Which is that?
They have
I burped. I don't know
Farted.
if I farted.
they have ricin on them or like what kind of mysterious? Are they going to
Anthrax.
Anthrax? Are they going to the White House?
No, who's
Sorry,
it
guys.
going to? We all have a past. Some of us darker than others. And while time presumably heals all wounds, it will leave behind deep scars that'll never truly disappear.
What pretentious bullshit.
You like the Joker. Calm down.
Bless you.
Around this time of year, I always seem to revisit these lesions of old. Fathomless gashes of misery and self-loathing. On a psychological level, I believe it all boils down to an envelope I received 19 years ago, the content of which is one of the reasons I relocate at least once a year. It never seems to help. No matter the identity I mask behind, no matter where I am in the world, the accursed envelope always finds the right mailbox. This should make me paranoid, anxious and terrified. Instead, it turns me into an alcoholic pseudo-philosopher. I'd been drinking for days, possibly weeks. I never really know how it'll affect me before it happens, you know. The dreaded day always looming in the periphery, its dark call beckoning me into the pits of mindless depravity and despair. If I wasn't so goddamn hungover, I'd find the depressing poetry of it to be quite breathtaking. "You can't sleep here, man," a scruffy-looking middle-aged man explained. "It's a fucking dumpster, for Christ's sakes." He was right. It was a dumpster. But I'd argue they make perfect makeshift beds for when you're too drunk to find your way home. Or find anything. I was in no condition to put my point across, however, so I decided that, for the time being, it'd be better off following his unsolicited advice. "Where the fuck am I?" I mumbled, dragging my body over the edge of the dumpster and doing a terrible job of landing on my feet. "In fucking back alley, man. What does it look like?" "Looks like a fucking back alley," I said, "but I'm more interested in how I ended up here." He threw a couple boxes filled with what, judging by the sound, was empty glass bottles into the dumpster and helped me get on my feet. The bouncer probably bounced you, he grinned toothlessly. That's his job, you know. I nodded thoughtfully. That scenario had definitely had me written all over it. I thanked the mysterious stranger by punching him in the nose and set out to find the assumed business of which I was forcibly removed from. I remember the first time I opened the envelope vividly, 19 years ago almost to the day. For a long time, I had been aware of how empty the house had become, how empty I had become. The envelope was just an envelope back then, mail, no feelings attached to its dull, lifeless surface. The contents shivers down my spine, vomit to the back of my mouth. I tried for years to hunt down the sender, but there was just nothing to go on. It's perhaps that particular aspect that bothers me the most. The fact that he finds me every year, regardless of identity and location, or it could be the content, the pavilion reaction to the envelope's appearance. So many unanswered questions. I stopped outside what appeared to be a bar, the faded sign above the entrance stating that this was the House of Crazies, and that they'd held open from dusk till dawn. I possessed no electronic device in which to accurately predict time, but the sun, which was hovering mid-sky like a big old jerk, gave me the impression that it was before dusk and after dawn. The door was unlocked, however, so I sauntered in regardless. The surroundings seemed familiar. Dark marble-like floor, polished and cold as steel, centered in which was a splendid mahogany bar counter, adorned by a red neon sign proclaiming that this was the blood station. Horror-inspired paintings and sculptures emphasized the ridiculously tasteless interior style, like a deformed dot over the gimmicky eye. A lanky young man stood behind the counter, grinning madly in my direction as I stumbled toward him, his incredibly shiny bald head only overshadowed by the amount of piercings dangling from it. He said you'd be back, he gave me a weak nod. Said you couldn't stay away. Who? I mumbled confusedly. Do I fucking know you? Gave me $500 to tell you a story. What the fuck are you talking about? The man with the envelope, he whispered hoarsely. He said you knew what that meant. I grabbed him by the neck, pulling him in real close. I'm assuming that my breath must have reeked of alcohol, vomit, death, and decay, because his otherwise cheery demeanor suddenly faded. Where is he? I demanded. Who is he? Calm down, man, he whispered. He isn't here anymore. He just gave me the money and told me to tell you the story. I released my grip momentarily. The absurdity of the situation not lost on me. It all felt so familiar, though, like I'd been down this road before. Story, I asked? What fucking story? He shrugged. Fuck if I know, he said. He told me you'd understand, though. Go on, then, I said, sitting down on a vacant bar stool. Bring me a bottle of scotch and lay it on me. From what I could gather, the main character of the story I was currently enjoying was either Denver, Dallas, Dodge, or Dirk. He was either extremely tall or unusually short, had blonde or black hair, or maybe he didn't. He was apparently anywhere between 20 and 50 years old and was addicted to heroin, cocaine, alcohol, or some combination thereof. This Denver, Dallas, Dodge, or Dirk had a girlfriend named Donna. Together they injected, digested, possibly inhaled most of the drugs known to man, and generally did everything to avoid facing prostitution, petty theft, robbery, you name it. Down the line, they'd naturally accumulated a sizable drug debt, one of which they were constantly struggling to pay off. Fingers were broken, black eyes applied, toenails removed, but to no avail. Addictions is a lifestyle you embrace, body and soul. Physical pain is easy. You can get used to that. Dealing with your own shitty life sober? Now that's the real torture right there. There came a time, though, when no one wanted to deal to them anymore. The rumor had spread to every drug dealer in the district. Absolutely no one wanted anything to do with the couple. The situation was precarious. Denver, Dallas, Dodge, or Dirk went out one night to make one last desperate attempt to score something. Several hours later, empty-handed, he returned to the cardboard box of a shithole they occupied, only to find a scene that would have sent him spiraling into madness if he wasn't already there. place was in shambles, more than normal. Lamps broken, pillows tore open, couch upside down, tables and splinters, blood on the walls, ceiling and floor. In the middle of it, centered as a macabre art piece, Donna's body. Donna, already worn thin after several days without a fix, had completely freaked out. She trashed the place, looking for any substance she could inject into her body, but found nothing. Hysterical and driven by torturous despair, she used a kitchen knife to cut her wrists. Without having the right technique or luck to slice through any major arteries, a dozen wounds on each arm emphasized this fact. She had then stabbed 4 needles into her ear canals, 3 of which had penetrated the middle ear, while the 4th had found its way into the inner ear. She'd most likely tried to replace the physical and mental craving for drugs with extreme pain. It didn't work. We've been over this. It never works. She then went on to use a lighter to burn away every single hair on her body and also parts of her nose. According to the investigators who arrived first at the scene, the smell of burnt flesh lingered in the air, but it didn't stop there. Driven by now unrelenting madness and pain, she methodically began to rip out pieces of her own flesh with her teeth. She concluded this extreme ceremony by digging out her left eyeball with a spoon, previously used to prepare heroin. The weird thing, though, was that the eyeball had disappeared without a trace. They couldn't find it anywhere. They figured she died from the blood loss, and the gallons of it splashed across every inch of the place could definitely support this notion. The autopsy, on the other hand, unveiled that she had died from something as trivial as suffocation, and in her throat they found the cause. Yeah, you guessed it. Her eyeball.
Fucking knew it.
Fucking knew it. Well, that's just fucked up, I said drunkenly, having emptied a bottle of scotch during the tale. Seriously, man, what the fuck? Hey, man, that's the story, he shrugged, the mad grin suddenly returning to his face. He said you'd understand. Well, I fucking don't, he snarled, tipping over the bottle childishly. Fuck you, I'm out of here. I don't quite know what I was expecting. A reaction, a veiled threat, an unveiled threat, something. But he didn't even flinch, just smiled as I flipped him the finger and stumbled toward the exit. Before I left, though, I threw a glance back at him, a question lingering in the back of my mind, forcing its way out. Hey, what was his name? What did he look like? The barkeep shrugged. Never gave me a name. Some old geezer. Nothing special about him. Real sad eyes, though. I nodded. I dropped $100 bill on the floor. Thanks, I muttered as I left. The sky was dark. The big old jerk of a sun, all but covered by depressing clouds. I stumbled back to my shitty residence, this time around an abandoned cabin in the pouring rain. Contemplating the surreal story. It wasn't true, was it? Could it? The world is a fucked up place, populated almost exclusively by fucked up people. Anything can be true, and nothing can be true. I crashed on the couch the moment I found it. The dreamless sleep, by this point, my only escape from the acidic shithole of my puke-black mind. There are no winners in life, I noted pseudo-philosophically. Just fucked up people in a fucked up existence. I don't know how long I was out, but I knew it didn't matter. I woke up precisely when I was meant to. Was there a knock? Maybe a slight poke to my ribs? A whisper in my ear? I can't really say, but I jolted awake, possessed by a very familiar feeling of dread. The front door was wide open, a fresh set of muddy boot prints running all the way to the couch and back again. A single item left behind, the only thing in this shit life I truly feared, loathed, despaired, the envelope. I grabbed it with trembling fingers. I wanted nothing more than to just throw it away, dispose of it, forget it ever existed. But I never could bring myself to do it. I always had to open it, like some junkie craving his next fix of gruesome morbidity. The content dropped to the floor like so many times before it. It was never identical, but it was always caused me to double over in disgust. A severed finger this year, deformed, blackish in complexion, only vaguely humanoid. The unmistakable stench of death entered my nostrils almost immediately, and I instinctively buried my face in my sleeve. Always a body part, a severed piece of someone, of something, a reminder, a threat. These are the questions that have haunted me for 19 years. This time it was different. This time the envelope contained more. A simple handwritten note. It's almost over. And that's it.
What?
That's it.
What's almost over?
I'm guessing it's a thing where they've been getting these envelopes for years because there was an incident where the person sending them killed somebody.
Them for 19 years.
Yeah, he killed that girl, and then he's been sending the body parts to the main character for 19 years, and he's run out of body parts now.
Yeah, I was like, I'm guessing it's just running out of body parts.
That's why he said it's almost over. That one's okay. It's more believable, I suppose, but don't know where he'd keep this body without getting caught for 20 years to have at least a yearly access to it.
Finding this dude. Definitely
Keeps the body
a little
preserved for
chilling.
20 years.
A little scarier.
A little chilling. The idea of someone just knowing where you are and fucking with you. That's a pretty fucked up concept.
The main character had their map on Snapchat.
Yeah, they had their snap maps.
It's like an
on.
episode of You.
Yeah, it is very similar.
So you just need to get the address once, and then when you move and you change your address everywhere else, just not easy for them to find you. Well, it is easy for them to find you.
Yeah, because someone could literally move and be like, "Oh, hey, like, changing my address in a fucking request for the post office." Somebody
It's the
sends some shit.
postmaster.
Yeah,
It's the postmaster that did it. That's why he keeps finding them.
could be. Because when you send that shit through the post office, somebody sends mail to your old address, and then all of a sudden, like, it's going to sit there for a day
Yeah.
at least, and then they're going to be like, "Oh, hey, old address." Well, someone could be like, if it's just a fucking mailbox, open that shit up. Oh, hey, look, this is where they're living at now.
That's true.
But I also think it'd be one of those things where it's like all this shit happened and like it's been drawn out, and this guy, gets close to a girl, and then the same shit happens to her, and the cycle repeats.
What I'm wondering is, if this happened for 19 years, why did the main character never go to the police and be like, hey, on this day, some crime scene evidence is going to end up getting put into my mailbox. Can you guys please, stake it out?
That's fair. That's fair.
If he was that worried about it, I figured, getting the cops involved would have been a thing year one, if not year two.
Yeah, it was probably year 2. The first time I might write it off and just be like, wow, that was wild.
Yeah, whatever.
No, I'd definitely call
But
the
year
cops
2,
if an ear.
I'd be like, hey, this is pretty weird.
If a cut off ear came in my mail, hell no, I'm
think
calling the cops.
I don't think it fazed me
your
that
ass.
much. If you sent me a body part, I'd probably just be like, that's wild.
At least
But if you did it every day or every year on the same day, I'd be like, oh, this is
Guess what you're getting for Christmas?
this is fetishy, I guess. Start to get worried. Just come to the next squad meetup and you're just like down a couple fingers.
Yeah, can I have those back now?
Oh, here, I got them on
I
ice.
kept them on ice the whole time. I put them in dry ice. But yeah. So those were my scary stories.
Wow.
I tried to keep them all relatively in the realm of reality.
Yeah.
Nothing too supernatural. I agree. That was my favorite as well. I think that one was cool. I liked the ending.
So, what's everyone's closing thoughts for the Seattle Chronicles?
I have to call American Airlines after this and make sure I can go home tomorrow.
Whole weekend.
And then I have to smoke a lot of weed. It's gonna be a long night.
It's been a fun time. It's going to suck having to go home and be away from the boys for months on end. It's going to be real hard.
Luckily, Discord's a thing.
Yeah, I know, but it's, not the same as being there.
I'm excited to be on my PC again, though. I won't lie.
I definitely agree with that. It'll be good to be back home, but it's been a fun weekend. I still have plenty of beer to finish because not a lot of people have helped me out this weekend.
Why wasn't it me?
Because you're the only one in this room I can look at because Gage isn't here.
He's just dead.
No, but overall weekend, it's been good.
I agree. It was a good trip.
I definitely look forward to coming back to Seattle again.
Oh, hella. I like Seattle a lot.
That, look forward to having another squad meetup,
That too.
hanging out with the boys.
Or
Definitely
wherever
need
we end up
We
next.
need to plan it early like we did now because we got a lot of people once we planned it.
We got really good deals on
Yeah.
both hotel rooms and the flights. You know, obviously with all the COVID-19 stuff, that helps out a little bit, but
Come on.
yeah, I probably spent more money on Uber than I did on my fucking plane ticket.
Right?
Straight up.
Straight up.
Straight up on that one.
Straight up. Okay. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. As always, we'd like to give a big shout out to Rogue Energy for powering the GameNight Podcast. You can use code GameNight to save 10% off your entire order of Rogue Energy. A new flavor should be dropping soon, so look out for that. And we'd also like to give a big thank you to Cali Bars for sponsoring the Seattle Chronicles. It was a pleasure working with you guys. Be sure to use the link in the description below to purchase Cali Bars and support the podcast. But with that, we are going to wrap up the Seattle Chronicles. And one last time, with the boys, I'm going to tell you, bye-bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.